Hello, and welcome to Get Recc'd. I am your host, Stephen Falgout.
And I am your other host, Don Falgu, and Get Recc'd is our bi weekly podcast where each episode, Stephen and I, two siblings, get together and recommend a piece of media to each other, be it an album, a video game, a film, or whatever else. And then in the upcoming episode, we discuss each other's recommendations.
You started to have a little bit of a William Shatner cadence there.
Yeah, well, I've been working on that. I've been honing that for my podcast voice because I feel like it just really makes the audience cling onto every single one of my words.
Yes, and because you're a method actor, you've been method acting as William Shatner
Yeah, I've actually been
for
tweeting
weeks.
from the William Shatner Twitter account. That's actually been me for the past few months. So
Oh shit, Twitter takeover.
if anyone's been following William Shatner, that would be me. And yeah, I've been doing a pretty good job.
Welcome everyone to episode 82. Of course, in this episode we have two complimentary recommendations. As everyone knows, Neon Genesis Evangelion and Lizzo go hand in hand. Actually, Lizzo created Evangelion. I don't know if people knew this, but that's why these recommendations that we have lined up for you to talk about today were made as such
Yeah,
because they're just so interjoined.
and it's a little bit of a spoiler for Steven actually, because I haven't I had to inform him that Lizzo not only is the series creator of Evangelion, but also in the big twist ending, it is revealed that Rey is actually Lizzo. Um, now that's a spoiler for everybody here, and I have to apologize in advance, but it's just that with this combination, I had to play my hand.
Well, I guess we could just jump right into Lizzo's masterwork, shall we?
Yes, we shall. You go ahead and explain it.
Okay, well, of course, this was not Lizzo's masterwork. Lizzo's masterwork is Evangelion. We will get to that soon. But after Evangelion, Lizzo created the studio album "'Cause I Love You." This was a 2019 release by Lizzo, the performing artist. This was not, I think I had mentioned last time that this was their first release. That is kind of true. This is technically, I believe, the third album by Lizzo, but this was kind of the first labeled album, or album under a label, I guess I should say. And so because of that, it feels as though this is kind of like the first album. Now I didn't explicitly, and I'll be maybe we should talk about this first because I know that in the past, and we even went a little inside baseball before and talked about it a bit. Typically, whenever we recommend an album to each other, we don't touch any of the not like the ancillary stuff. So the deluxe editions, the premium editions, the Kickstarter exclusive, you actually are Lizzo edition or whatever. However, with this one, the deluxe edition actually ultimately ended up becoming the higher charting album, and a lot of the well-known singles actually came off a deluxe edition extra content. So I didn't explicitly recommend to you the deluxe edition, so I'd be curious to know, did you listen to the deluxe edition or just the base album?
I think I just listened to the base album. It was only 11 tracks and like a little over 30 minutes. So I think it was the base.
Okay. That is good to know. That sets things up. So as I mentioned, the deluxe version did add a few tracks, and two of those tracks ended up becoming singles and are some of the well-known Lizzo tracks from this album, but we will not talk about those. We will just stick to talking about the main studio album release. So I will hand it off to you, Don, to talk about that.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to mention that I've been very out of the loop with like the charting hits of each year for probably like 5 or 6 or even more years than that. So like, while to many people, I think this album is like beyond old news, because I think the turnaround rate for hit music right now is like even faster than ever before with like TikTok and stuff. So I have no idea like how out of touch it seems for me to say this, but I had never heard a single track from this record. Although I have heard like 2 Lizzo songs before this that I liked, but like that was about it. And even those songs I didn't hear because I was like exposed to them in the way most people probably would be. I really have no idea what's going on half the time. And it's not because I am like against pop music or anything. I don't know. I'm just out of the loop. Um, but you know, I had positive feelings toward Lizzo going in, because I had heard some pretty banging tracks, and this album is just chock full of banging tracks. I mean, it was really everything I could have wanted, and honestly, and then some from what I had heard from Lizzo. Like, it's just really all killer, no filler with this one. I mean, it's kind of, I think the current trend for charting releases, and I think what labels are trying to push right now, are albums that are like very long. It's not necessarily length they care about, it's just number of tracks. Because as I understand it, it's just better for Spotify numbers and streaming numbers in general for your album to have more and more and more tracks. But this album is just super no bullshit. Like you get what you get with this album. You get what you come for, and honestly, and then some. I mean, I don't think that Lizzo's sound is one note at all. Actually, I think she's like super versatile, and in the at least the 11-track version of the record, that versatility is just like right on display. Like, there's quite a number of influences woven into the record, and different tracks hammer on those influences more than others. So some tracks are like extremely poppy. Um, they sound like what you expect from like a Spotify hit or something, and then other tracks sound a lot more like soul songs infused with a little bit of trap. And then there are just some fun pop rock bangers on here too. Honestly, there's a lot on the album for how short it is, and I found it super re-listenable. Like, I really didn't get tired of this album, and like I could just let it repeat over and over again and just have a blast with this record. It was super good, and I think the main thing that makes it so good is really Lizzo herself, which is great. You know, this isn't a pop album where I feel the need to mention all of the co-collaborators or whatever, because she completely steals the show. I think without her and her performance and her personality, and her energy, I think a lot of these tracks, production wise, are mostly just okay. Like, there are some interesting influences woven throughout the tracks, but it's mostly just okay. I don't think the production was very special. I didn't think it was bad. It was fine. But Lizzo just commands these tracks so well. Like, just really gets you into a very positive, self-love kind of vibe for most of the songs. And it just hits. I mean, really, track after track, it just hits.
I think what's so great about Lizzo is she has such a unique voice, and I don't mean that in vocal style, but just like the content of the tracks just feels so refreshing, and as you mentioned, kind of like uplifting, self-love. It's just there's so much to really like on top of just absolute bangers of quality, just like tonal quality, those sorts of things. I will say the one thing about the album as the 11 track album is it is only 33 minutes and it flies by, which I think is both a benefit and a detriment. Like in a lot of places, the album almost feels like there's a rush to it. Um, but I don't know. I mean, with any pop album, you kind of always have to take, it feels like you kind of always have to take the album as an entity with like a grain of salt because truly this album is just meant to spawn singles. Not that I feel like any of these tracks were built in such a way to where, Lizzo didn't put her full effort into all this. All of these feel like really good, really strong Lizzo tracks, like through and through, but definitely there is a speed to this thing that is in some ways kind of a downfall or a detriment.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is over as soon as it starts, but I would argue that's a really good thing. I mean, if when it comes to a pop album where they really are a vessel for hits, either nowadays streaming hits, before then radio hits or whatever. But the problem is that because I think a lot of artists are pushed to make their albums longer and longer and stack the track lists more and more, um, if you do choose to listen to the album, they're not all hits. Like this album, the lean 33-minute, 11-track runtime here, it's like every single one of these songs could be a hit. Like they are all fantastic. Well, that's not necessarily true, but they could all be a hit for sure. And frankly, the fact that it flew by, I love that about it because this was so easy to listen to. This is one of the easiest Recs I've ever gotten. Like this shit it's so short, it's so to the point, and honestly, like it was just fun. There wasn't a lot of analyzing I had to do. I didn't even have to think that much about why I liked or didn't like it because really, it slapped. And it was simple for that reason. And yeah, no, I mean, but I will say also, like, in addition to it flying by, I think it's paced well. Like I think it flows fine as an album. Surely it doesn't feel necessarily like some kind of grand package or anything, or like it's really a statement in and of itself. But it flows well. Like I thought it worked just fine as an album. The opener was a great opener. Closer was a great closer. Maybe not the most theatrical thing ever, but it totally did its purpose. And on the note of the opener, by the way, I just like to say, like, another thing that makes this work as an album is just how well it just kicks the door down with that opener. I love it when an album starts and it just feels like it's such a huge event right off the bat. And she did a great job with the title track here. It's just such a bombastic, epic song. And that was a great choice to open this album with. And then Lingerie, the like slow, sexy R&B number at the end, was a great choice to end it with. I mean, I can't speak to the deluxe edition of the record, which I do see has like basically other big hits. I recognize the names of these songs at least. And one of these I have heard, so that would have been the one song I would have heard from this. I can't speak to how well those tracks close it out or how well they enhance it, but it really doesn't matter. Like, I think the base album here, it works well. It's good. It's good as just like a vessel for hits because any of these songs could be hits. They're all good. But it works as an album too. Like as a pop album, I can put this on, jam out. It works. It does what it sets out to do. And I respect that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the title track here because it's such a great opener track. It feels like a James Bond title track with trap.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Yeah.
And it's
Little Live and Let
so
Die
good.
with the big horns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other track I wanted to talk about, I am kind of sad that I did not recommend to you the deluxe because honestly, some of my favorite tracks from this album come from those extra deluxe tracks. Now, whether they like add something to the pacing of the album, that I'm not quite as sure, but the tracks themselves are really great. But let's talk about what I think is probably the best track in this bass track list and what ultimately became one of the biggest singles, and that's Juice. because that to me is like such a defining Lizzo track. Like it is just so fun to listen to. It is really energetic. She has taken that and really owned that style, which has really become her style, and that style then flows into what ultimately became some of the biggest or the equally biggest singles out of this track, which were from the deluxe version, like Truth Hurts, like Good as Hell. Now she has some singles on the radio as well that all kind of follow that same style. But it's just such a fun track. It's so it's so good, and it really, I think, puts into perspective like how well she does with creating something that I really feel like is different. Like Lizzo is someone who absolutely stands out to me when they are on the radio. Like you can definitely like Lizzo makes a name for themselves in that Hot 100 easily. Every time a Lizzo track comes on, it is so fun, so energetic, and so different. And I feel like Juice really exemplifies that.
Yeah, I love Juice too. I mean, I would echo most of what you just said there. And I think one of the big things about the song is like it's another vessel for her to show off just her just amazing personality. It's so bubbly. It comes through so well. The bridge in particular to the track is just funny and it's great. I mean, the chorus is great. It's catchy. It's been stuck in my head today. Um, and yeah, I know that I'm aware that's like the big radio hit here. I think my favorite track was Jerome. I really, really liked the songs where Lizzo like really went in on those soul influences, like Jerome and Crybaby, Lingerie, and the title track as well. Like, she is an amazing soul singer, and I almost feel like what I would want to hear from Lizzo isn't even like just the total pop stuff, which she does super well as well. But I would love to hear like a soul album, a straight up soul album from Lizzo. It would be amazing. Her voice is incredible. I cannot believe like I feel like I've been aware of her as like kind of a pop rapper. That's what I thought she was, although the songs I'd heard from her didn't really seem to be that. But I feel like maybe that's what she's seen as. But like she is an incredible singer. Her voice is amazing. It is huge. Her range is fantastic. I mean, she's awesome. And her personality comes through her singing too, and her rapping whenever she does that on this record also. I don't mean to throw that aspect of her under the bus. But yeah, like Jerome and Crybaby, those two songs, like the guitar and Crybaby, oh my god, that was so good. That stuff was great. And then yeah, and Lingerie too. I loved the soul tracks. They were super super cool. As for like the other stuff here, the song Tempo was super super entertaining, and also Missy Elliott killed it. I mean, of course she did, but that was cool to see like a Missy Elliott feature. And then the one other thing I wanted to mention was a few of the tracks that I didn't like as much. Although again, I think this is all solid. Everything on here is good. But like there was the song Soulmate, which I felt like the novelty of that song wore off for me after a little while. Like it was a very good mission statement for Lizzo's whole self-love thing, where she's like writing a love song to herself, which is a cute concept, but the song was like a bit much for me. The amount of like vocal layers and hooks just constantly coming at you got a little annoying, but I still liked the song. And toward the back end, there was like the song with Gucci Mane, which you know it was pretty good. Um, but again, I think my favorite stuff here was when she leaned more into the R&B influences. That was where like I was super enthralled with this album.
I do want to talk about things, and that's a good segue into some things I wanted to mention because I don't know if I'll be able to mention them again. But um, Lizzo, for anyone curious, actually has an NPR Tiny Desk series or concert in the Tiny Desk series. If anyone's unfamiliar, NPR get performers to do like kind of very small scale, downsized concerts for them. You can see them on YouTube, and Lizzo specifically has a incredibly good Tiny Desk concert where she really leans into the R&B portion of what you liked so much about the R&B tracks. and it really scales it back as well. So that would be my small recommendation. The other thing is, she actually majored in classical flute. So if you've ever seen, if anyone's curious,
That's the
and
GIF,
look it up,
right? There's like a GIF of her.
Lizzo
Yeah.
notoriously will bust the flute out and like twerk and play the flute at the same time. And she's been doing it for a long time. In fact, if you look up on YouTube, Lizzo was making like YouTube flute covers like all the way back in like 2010, before she was like ever anywhere near as popular as she is now. But yeah, she like play the flute and like fire comes out of the flute and stuff. It's crazy. But yeah, she is
Amazing.
a classical flautist, which is kind of a weird thing. But yeah, she will bust out the flute sometimes, and it's incredible. If anyone is curious.
Um, no, I mean I don't really have much else to add. It's something popped in my head, but it left right after. So I think we can go ahead and wrap it up if you're okay with that.
You were just going to talk about your classical flute experiences.
Yeah, but I don't twerk when I play the flute, so I mean she's got one up on me. Anyway, yeah, no, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm not really surprised that I enjoyed it either, because I thought I would, but it was a lot better than I even expected it to be, because it's like a top 40 pop album. I expected there to be some great tracks and then a lot of weaker tracks, but I was just really impressed by how lean and like just, again, no bullshit this was. It was just so solid. Again, I feel like every song here could be a hit, and like maybe there are tracks that stand out as singles, but at the same time, like nothing really overshadows anything too hard here. And I loved how she was able to show all of her versatility in just this lean 11-minute track list. It was super good. Um, you know, I feel like if she made a soul album, it would be incredible. As this is, there's stuff here I preferred to other songs. Everything was good, but about half the album was more like, yeah, if I heard this in a Spotify playlist, I would dig it, but I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, Lizzo, amazing. And then other tracks, I'd pretty much be head over heels for. So that was how I felt about it overall. I'd give it an 8. And I actually quite strongly recommend it, because I feel like most people are gonna just have fun listening to this, and it's so short. It's so easy to put on. It doesn't feel like you're taking anything out of your day to start and listen to this album, especially if it's the 11-minute one, or not 11-minute, 11-track one that I listened to, and it's just a great pop record. It's really good, and even doubles as a solid soul record in like certain parts. So I really liked this, and I'm gonna be checking out more of her stuff for sure.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed this album too. I highly recommend the deluxe version. I'm sad I did not recommend it here, so we could talk about some of those tracks as well, because they are just absolute bangers, real slappers for sure. So if you're going to listen to this, I would actually recommend to listen to the deluxe version. It adds maybe another 10 minutes of runtime total, so it still stays pretty lean. And honestly, some of the deluxe tracks on the deluxe version are actually just remixes of, like, one of the tracks I think is Good as Hell, and then also Good as Hell but with Ariana Grande. So if you wanted to lean it even more, you probably don't need to listen to both, but I think it's definitely worth listening to the deluxe version. But even this bass version is very tight. All the tracks are super listenable. There's just so much energy. It's so fun. It really comes right out the gate and hits you, and it does not. You do not lose interest from that point onward. So I don't remember if I gave a score, but I also give it an 8, and I recommend it. So
All
now
right,
we can talk about Lizzo's real masterpiece.
Neon Genesis Evangelion. Yeah, which I mean everybody knows. So I don't even know why we're mentioning it. But anyway, I recommended to Steven the 1995-1996 anime series Neon Genesis Evangelion. So this is the first time we've split up a rec across multiple episodes. It's going to take us 5 episodes in total, because we're doing 4 episodes for the series, 1 episode for the film. end of Evangelion at the end. And yeah, I guess I'll do all my introing here because I'm not going to need to do it after this point. But Neon Genesis Evangelion is a series directed by Hideki Anno. It's an example of like a real, I guess you could call it auteur filmmaking in anime. I mean, I don't know how common that is, but really, like, it's his vision and it's very strong and strict. Um, and It is a series about these teens who are forced to pilot mechs, the Evangelion units, to defeat these monsters who are angels, and they come to destroy this new Tokyo, like, I don't know, every week or some shit. And I'll just leave it to Steven to start talking about specifically the first 6 episodes. And so I will also add, oh, by the way, I forgot to do the thing with Lizzo. We were supposed to say our favorite tracks. We're not going to do it this time, but I want to remind myself about that. Anyway, at the end of this, we're not going to give it a score or even recommend it yet. Consider this an in-progress recommendation that we're just going through like 6 or 7 episodes at a time. Anyway, Steven can start talking about it now.
I don't think I mentioned this in the episode last week, but I know that I mentioned it to you at least after the episode. So I have never seen this before. So I was excited to get into this because one, it gives me an excuse to actually sit down and watch it. But two, because obviously, it is very much talked about, both this series itself and then some of the films as well, which I think even there was even a film that came out as early or as late as last year.
There was a series of, recently, I don't know when it started, but there was a series of what are called rebuilds, which are movies essentially remaking the original series. I think the final one of those came out last year. I haven't seen any of those, but it basically turns Evangelion into more of a modern anime with more modern anime look, and it adds a new character to the series. I don't know
Goku.
a ton about it. Yeah, Goku. I don't know a ton about it, but yeah, that's that stuff.
Okay. So this series really just has such an interesting style. I feel like there is certainly a vision and a direction here that oftentimes I feel like with anime, just by the nature of the way anime is created and manga as well, it's like you are creating this as long form, like it is long form. So oftentimes what that what that equates to is a lot of filler or a lot of stretching of plot lines. But this is so precise and to the point, even in these first 6 episodes. I mean, honestly, like, it just goes. You don't really even get you get like pieces of a background understanding of the main character and their relationship with at least their father, who would be the other character in this set of characters that we've been shown in the first 6 episodes that have any sort of like history with each other. But for the most part, you're just kind of going through the motion of, following the main character, Shinji, as they become a pilot, as they are sort of forced to become a pilot in a way that we don't necessarily 100% fully understand yet, theoretically, but obviously his father works on the giant mechs that are fighting the angels, so there probably is some tie there, but you're following this teen kind of become what ultimately will be some sort of hero, and already within the first few episodes they fight and are able to kill some of the angels, which are kind of this big bad threat. It's like a kaiju film, but if there was more introspection, is how I've looked at it so far. Like very clearly it's like, big monster versus big robot, but so much of the show is like kind of a look on each of these different characters, their personalities, and like how they relate to this larger conflict. The only thing I'll say about the first 6 episodes, speaking of the conflict, is like, at least to now, we don't really have any sort of grasp or understanding except for like small pieces of like what this entails, or even how the larger world kind of looks at this, because honestly, in a way, it almost feels like most characters are nonchalant about the whole fact that like there are giant monsters that fly in from the sky and blow up the town like every week. um but anyway, watching Shinji go through this, I think one of the scenes that really stands out to me was, and where I saw this and immediately had an idea that this would be quite different from anime that I've seen before, is like, Shinji loses that first battle, or at least we're led to believe that's the case. Like the hard cut at the end of the episode where, you know, we've been building up to Shinji getting in the robot and going kill this thing, and then he just like gets absolutely destroyed, and it like hard cuts to him waking up in the hospital. Like that sort of stuff is really engaging and really interesting. And then, it kind of fills in the gaps from there. But you get a lot of that in this series, and especially, I can only speak to the first 6 episodes, but even in these first 6 episodes, you get a lot of those like very specifically tailored hard cuts, or, viewpoints from different angles, or you get, a lot of your the whole show is third person, but in a way you're kind of getting a first person look based on the perspective of Shinji. Um, so it's very interesting in that way. And then by the time we get to the last episode, we start to kind of expand that world. So Shinji, and as well Misato, who kind of takes Shinji under her wing and is sort of like the commander, I think, or like the captain of these combat missions. You get a good feel for their two personalities and how they two kind of relate to each other. There's a really good episode where Shinji basically thinks about running away, and I don't know, Misato almost has, I wouldn't call it like a mom and son relationship with Shinji, but certainly like sort of brother sister, or at least very good friend relationship, where there's a really good scene where she thinks he's getting on the train, and the train goes and he's still there, and he's kind of reconsidered because also he's made some friends at school and he's no longer alone. And then on the flip side, by the time the 6 episode ends, you get an understanding of someone who is almost equally as isolated as he is in Ray, and like her relationship with his dad and what that means to her, and then they kind of bond in a weird way, and there's a really good like not allegory, but like almost scene for scene shot of how she was saved by his dad and then he saved her. There's just a lot going on, and even in these 6 episodes, it's very to the point, very streamlined, but you still get a lot of good depth of understanding of all these characters and how they relate. And it's not just, although they're, and again, we've only seen 6 episodes, but although basically like every couple episodes out of the 6, there is a big fight between a robot and an alien. Those fights are so tight and short that it doesn't necessarily feel so much like a shonen anime, where it's almost like it's more about the complexities of like all of the different characters than it is about the big battles between kaiju and mecha.
Right, and those battles are still uh, pretty awesome. I mean, the presentation of the fights is great, and a lot of that is just because of how tight it is. There's not a lot of dicking around, which makes the battles feel more real. I mean, it's going to be difficult for me to just review the first 6 episodes because I've seen this series a few times and like I know everything that comes after, so it's hard. But I will say that I think the battles, even though they can be kind of repetitive, you start to pick up on like, okay, it kind of goes the same way every time. Um, it's all in the editing and the directing and the like. It's always tense. It's always super tense, and it also helps that like you already see this in these first 6 episodes, but like the angel designs are so interesting and so unique, and frankly, so are the Evangelions. Like as mechs, they're very unique. Everything is very unique, and it gives you in these first 6 episodes the impression that like something bigger is happening. Like, this is not just a mechs fighting show, you know? Like, that's maybe the shell of it, but it's obvious, like, there's just something weird to it all. And I think in the first 6 episodes in particular, um, they set up Shinji's they set up Shinji not so much, as you said, by like really telling you a lot about his background, although you learn some things. It's more just in the way that he responds to the situation, where it's like being forced to pilot this mech that he doesn't want to do. They spend almost an entire episode of just him saying, I don't want to pilot it. And then they're like, pilot it. And he's like, I don't want to pilot it. And they're like, pilot it. And he's like, I don't want to pilot it. And they spend like 30 minutes on that in the first episode. That's an exaggeration, but you know, a really long time. Like you can see there's something about him and his responses to all the stuff that happens to him in the first 6 episodes, like getting bullied and actually fighting the angels and stuff. Like, he's not a very well-adjusted kid. Like, he's very he's obviously self-conscious. He obviously has problems relating to people, and he definitely does not have a hero complex. And I don't remember exactly in these first 6 episodes if you start to see him gain any sense of like heroicism. No, you don't. It's true, you don't. Because there's the scene where he protects the bullies, and it's like, and they get to watch him fight after they previously bullied him because he's saving their lives. But like, even in that moment where he's doing something which is very heroic, he's saving people who might not have even had the decency to save him. That experience like ruins him. Like, it doesn't give him a sense of confidence. It doesn't give him like any excitement towards continuing this mission. You know, that whole event is the reason why he wants to leave. And like, you can just tell this kid is extremely depressed. It's like there's so many shots of him just sulking around, so many shots of him like in the Ava unit, and he just looks down. Like, it's so different to so many other anime of this sort, or really just series of this sort in general, because even though it seems like they, as an audience member, you want to get into the fights, you want to get into the hero story, it's just like, it's almost forcing you to feel bad about even wanting that, because everybody wants it for this kid, but he obviously doesn't want it for himself. And I think that in particular, these 6 episodes do an amazing job of setting that up. And I think one of the most exciting things about watching this series, and also about watching it through on this podcast, is going to be like how all of the seeds planted here really turn into something else over the course of the series. I just think, you know, the first 6 episodes do an amazing job of setting this all up. I think the next batch are interesting for another reason. But like, yeah, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only 2 Ava pilots in the first 6 episodes are Shinji and Rei. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, yeah, all right. Then never mind, I'll save my other thoughts.
And Rei, honestly, just barely. Most of what we learn about Rei is as a contrary to what we learn about Shinji, in that she had the 00 unit and was hurt for quite a long time, which is why Shinji even started. And it wasn't until really the last episode that we actually saw her in an Ava unit of the 6 episodes.
Yeah, okay, I remember what episode that is now. All right, yeah, I got myself placed. Well, one other thing I want to bring up is this is not the case over the course of the whole series, and Evangelion absolutely falls into some of the anime traps, although it is worth noting that, you know, this is such a massively influential series that so much of what we see in anime is based off of iconography and ideas presented here. So it is sometimes hard to say, like, is it falling into the trap or did it create the trap? It happens from time to time. But it also subverts a lot of that stuff a lot of the time, too. One of the scenes I think of is, I don't know which actual episode it's in. It's in one of these, where Shinji enters Rei's room. and you get that scene where the boy falls on the girl and like one of them is naked and it's like, oh, what? But the way it's presented is just so incredibly awkward. It's so slow, it's so quiet. There's no like funny sound effect or funny facial expression. It's just like so stark, especially because Ray is consistently so emotionless. It's like you never know what she's thinking. You barely know if you can believe what she's saying. So they take this thing, which in most anime would be like a haha, isn't that so silly? And it's instead, it's like almost kind of disturbing. You know, you just want to like get out of there. You feel bad for everyone involved.
But although in contrast, you still do get some, I don't know, more comedic scenes anytime anyone's at Masato's apartment.
Yeah.
I know there was at least one scene where she's drunk and they're talking about her curry, which tastes really bad, and also she has a penguin.
And the penguin is funny. Okay, that's a funny penguin, and I'm not going to hear any pen slander. So funny penguin.
Pen squared.
Yeah, pen squared. Yeah.
I, one thing that I really like about this, and I think I kind of alluded to it already, but the shot composition is incredible as well. So I mentioned some of the direction with some of the cuts and those sorts of things is really well done, but the shots in this anime, even from these first 6 episodes, just consistently are so good. So much sense of scale, so much sense of depth, so much clarity. There's a lot of color contrast that's used in a really engaging way. The one that stands out for me as I'm thinking about it is in that last episode, in the 6th episode, Shinji has to basically snipe the angel that they're fighting, and just the contrast of color and the composition of each shot really both one increases the tension but also just looks really beautiful. And that is a consistent thing that I've already noticed for these first 6 episodes, and I'm sure will continue as we keep going.
Yeah, it's like I was saying, it very much feels like an auteur effort. There's so much it's very filmic in that way. It feels like a movie by like an auteur director or something, with the like how every single shot is astonishing, and the shots become a part of the emotion of the series too. And there's so many that like I remember just thinking about episodes, like every episode, well, at least most of them have some like shot or something I remember from them because it's just so striking. And visually I think the show is aged, but it's aged in a really good way. It looks super classic, and it also allows it to stand out from what I think you generally think of as anime. Like, not to say it doesn't look like an anime, it obviously does, but if you watch any more modern anime like this looks different. The color composition, the vibrancy of the color, and also just like the shape of the characters and stuff. It's just it's a little different. So it's aged very gracefully, and it and even though I think it inspired a lot of modern anime, it stands very much apart from all that stuff in a way that's just helped it over time. I'm jumping around all over the place, but another thing,
it certainly stands out compared to its peers. So I joked about Goku, but like if you were to place this next to the original run of Dragon Ball Z specifically, which would have been timed around this release as well, I mean, it's like night and day. The color contrast and color clarity. Now, Dragon Ball does have some really incredible shots for sure, but nothing to the consistency of what I've already seen in these first 6 episodes.
yeah, one thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned, because I just got reminded of this, is like I don't know if there's any other moments I could call out that are like this, other than the one I already mentioned where Shinji is protecting the bullies and he's stabbing the angel. Like, there are so many moments in this series which are so viscerally intense. Like his scream. I really hope you've been watching the sub with the original Japanese audio. Is that right?
No, I'm dub only.
You're dub only? Okay, well that's unfortunate, but
No, just kidding. I've only been watching the sub.
Okay, thank God. Well, as I was looking back through these episodes in preparation and I had the dub on, oh my God, that's all I have to say. But anyway,
But I've watching the dubs in Spanish, so I have to translate all
Oh,
all the all the dub and the subtitles as
right.
well.
Well, anyway, the voice actor for Shinji is insane. Like when he screams during that moment, it's so extreme. And there's a lot of other points throughout the series, but that one right there, like that's what's so great about this series is that it I think one of the reasons why it is so grounded and so easy to take seriously for a series about big mechs or whatever is because like the you really not only do you get into the heads of these characters, but you just really feel their emotions and the performances of the voice actors and the striking colors and shot composition and all that kind of stuff. Like it really comes together into something that just it does feel big, it does feel grand, and it does, you know, it has a lot of the tropes of a mech show or whatever, but at the same time it just feels more real. You feel much more connected to the characters, and I think a part of that is that something a lot of people will sometimes criticize about the show if they don't like it is that, well, oh, well, you know, there's not a lot of character development or this or that, which I mean, there is, but also it's fair to some degree because compared to a lot of series, they don't do a lot of the standard stuff you're supposed to do for character development. I mean, they drop you in like just like that. And a lot of the characters become quite repetitive and like how they feel and how they react to things. So people think, oh, there's not enough growth or whatever. But I think that's a lot of what gives the show its character because, like, and a lot of why you get so connected to the characters in this series is because they just feel more real than that. They don't react to things like sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't react to things like just anime characters are supposed to. It's more human, and which really becomes important later on. But yeah,
Okay, well, I think that feels like all I want to say about the first 6 episodes. If you want to wrap it up, whatever that means for this.
yeah, I think wrapping it up is nothing for now. I think we're just going to skip that until we get to the end of the series. We can, you know, I think it's fair to wrap up the show and then the film separately, but I wouldn't want to wrap up like batches of episodes or whatever. But it's we
Okay, well,
well, we
I'll
both
just say
quite
this.
liked them.
Yes, I will say this. These first 6 episodes, I feel are very strong. I feel like they really got their point across. They're very streamlined. I really am enjoying everything that's going on so far in this first 6 batch. So I'm excited to keep going.
Great. Teeterman Cannon Chat is asking, where did you watch it? I believe you watched on Netflix, right?
Yes.
It is worth noting that a lot of Evangelion fans have big problems with the Netflix version because there are like it's a bit of a different translation and some things are lost. The main thing that Steven is missing out on, in my opinion, while there are tiny things, I understand why people don't like the changes, though I think they're tiny. I've seen them, they're tiny. But like the one thing I do think you're missing out on is the credits music. We didn't even talk about the intro song, but I mean, we shouldn't have to. The intro is iconic. It's amazing. The song
Classic.
is
Yep.
amazing. It's incredible. But like the credits add a ton to this show, and I believe the Netflix version changed it because of copyright issues. So in the original series, at the end credits, it's like a silhouette of it looks like Ray. I don't know what character it's supposed to be, like walking over like a river with the moon in the background, and it's a different cover song of the traditional song "Fly Me to the Moon." It's a different cover every single episode, like slightly different instrumental, slightly different vocalist, sometimes drastically, and it's like that choice adds a ton to the ending of these episodes. Like when it cuts to be continued and it plays like some variation of that song that's a little different than the last time you heard it in certain episodes, it really adds a ton. And unfortunately, Steven's missing that. But I think I feel I should mention it because if later down the line, and somehow it seems like Steven's interpretation of events are different than what was originally there, that might be why. I personally doubt that that's going to happen. I don't think the changes are that big, but it's worth noting anyway. And now that we got that out of the way, I think we should just move into recommendations. So, Steven, we'll start with you. And obviously, my recommendation, I'll still do it just for the sake of it, but everybody already knows what it is. Anyway, let's get into the recommendations. So, what do you have for me, Steven?
Okay, so for next time, I am going to recommend to you. We have to really catch up here. So we started this an episode ago, but I am going to recommend another board game. So they're gonna come hot and heavy from this point onward.
Oh my
Recommending
god.
another board game. This is Spirit Island. Spirit Island is a cooperative game. Came out originally in 2017. It was designed by Eric Royce, and it's published by Greater Than Games. Since 2017, it's had a few expansions, and kind of to celebrate its upcoming target-friendly version, which maybe we'll talk about that in the next episode, but also an announced new expansion coming this year as well. We will next time talk about Spirit Island. Spirit Island does have digital versions, so I'm not sure yet whether we will play the tabletop sim version of Spirit Island or play the officially licensed and released app. But regardless, we will be playing a digital version of Spirit Island for next time.
All right, and my recommendation is the next 7 episodes of Evangelion. So I believe that 26 divided by 4 is 6.5. So we'll have to do 2 episodes of 7, 2 episodes of 6. We'll do 7 for the next one. That will get you to episode 13. So that'll be, almost halfway there. And yeah, that'll be next episode. So I hope you're all excited for more Get Recc'd coming up in the next 2 weeks and every 2 weeks after. I think we've been doing a pretty good job of sticking to that schedule lately, and I hope that can continue.
I say we've been doing a pretty job.
We've been doing a pretty job. Yeah, it's a job. I can call it. I can definitely say that we've been doing a job of that. So, yeah. But thanks for watching. I would like to remind everybody that you can watch, or I should say listen to these podcasts as highlights on my Twitch. If you ever want to go back, or if you ever miss any, they will be put as highlights on Twitch. That is just a temporary thing, but I don't know how long of a temporary thing it will be. So for now, you can count on that being the case unless we ever announce differently. And unless Steven has anything for us, I think we're going to see ourselves out.
Yeah, just thank you everyone for listening as always, and look forward to the next episode in 2 weeks.
All right, well, those were our thoughts. Those were our recommendations. Get Recc'd.